We don't know exactly how much will come from each agency or each priority, but we will see over the coming months that number apportioned out, and each agency, each spending priority is going to have to face a big cut. And what lawmakers on the Hill are already saying is it's very clear environmental regulations, climate change programs, the kinds of things that have already been hot political targets are clearly going to be subject to the biggest cuts. We'll definitely see, big appropriations cuts to the EPA's programs to regulate all kinds of greenhouse gas emissions, mercury emissions, anything connected with fossil fuel pollution or pollution from coal, oil. These are all the kinds of things that are going to be sort of the first targets. It's also clear that President Obama's vision of significant investment, government investment in clean energy spending has pretty much come to a dead halt. He had an idea for a lot of new spending that had already been scaled down significantly. Any new spending on things like clean energy research, R&D, smart grid, carbon sequestration, sort of the pride and joy of the Obama administration, that money is just not going to be there. This one is so interesting because Democrats have been trying for years and years and years to roll back the tax incentives enjoyed by oil and gas companies. Right now, that's about $4 billion annually. Some of these tax breaks have been in place for almost 100 years. They're just ripe political targets. Right now, taxpayers are furious about the high gasoline prices that they're paying. Once again, we're seeing oil companies enjoying record profits. This is going to be the #1 political target on the table this fall as the super committee gets down to business. The real signal we'll have about whether or not they can actually do that is who will be the members of the super committee. If the Democrats on that committee are sort of the ilk that have long been crusading for rolling back these oil and tax breaks, they will push as hard as they possibly can. However, they will once again come up both the Republican defense of the oil industry and this broader fight about not increasing taxes, even if you call it, closing tax loopholes. And as the different leaders in the House and the Senate negotiate over who's going to be appointed, that kind of philosophical viewpoint is going to come under strong consideration. So we have to look at who those committee members are going to be, and that will give us a sense of how vulnerable those oil subsidies really are going to be. But that's going to be the #1 fight, and kind of the #1 political symbol as we look at the work of this super committee. The losers are advocates of environmental protection, environmental regulation, sort of the Obama progressives who had hoped to really push forward this agenda of increased environmental protection, increased activity by the Environmental Protection Agency. All of that is just really kind of grinding to a halt and under attack. And, on the other side of that, so far, it looks, at least to start, like the winners are the fossil fuel industry, our oil and coal. They had been looking at a host of strong new regulations that they were going to have to grapple with, and it looks like for the time being, a lot of the money to carry out those programs won't be there. The next step of that is, it doesn't look like this debt deal is clearly going to cut money for these programs, but it doesn't cut the legal authority or the legal requirement for the Environmental Protection Agency or these other agencies to carry out a lot of these regulations. So what we may be looking at is kind of a kicking the can down the road to taking this to court. If under the law, these regulations still have to be enacted, even if these agencies don't have money, we're definitely going to see these fights, but they're probably going to be in different arenas. One definite concern is energy infrastructure, specifically the grid. Already, the U.S. electric grid is strained to the limit, and the Obama administration had hoped to invest a great deal in bringing the grid up to date, investing in programs like a smart grid that would run more efficiently. We're not going to see any of that money clearly, and we may see a significant strain on, not so much on production, but on delivery of energy, on the electric grid, on all these pieces of infrastructure. And, there had been concerns about, we've seen in recent years blackouts, power shortages as a result of failings in the grid. And we may see an increase of those going forward if the government doesn't have the resources to keep that infrastructure up.